Three, two, one. Tyler?
Oh, you want to be the host?
Yeah, man, because you got all the topics. I don't have any. I don't have anything in front of me.
Oh crap. Okay. Cool.
I mean,
No
if you
problem.
want me to
Okay.
wing it, I can do it. I can do it.
I won't get. I won't get. No problem. Right. Three, two, one. You are listening to Know the Score on the CSPN. I'm your host, Tyler Ball, and alongside me is my partner in crime, Don Delarente. Our Twitters, you can find us on Twitter under Know the Score, the Know the Score account, which is at KTS Pod, and you can also find myself at TABALL number one, and you can find Don at Don Delarente. We're gonna go right into it. We're gonna discuss the Final Four and actually being we're just gonna break down just coming from the championship game as we're both Carolina fans in perspective. Uh, Don, let's first talk about the game itself, and what were your thoughts on it, and I'll give a perspective from a general idea. Go ahead.
Um, Thank you, Tyler. The game itself was just ugly. The referees really bogged down the second half. The first half was pretty good, had nice flow to it. Teams were moving up and down the court. They weren't necessarily making a lot of shots, but at least they were, keeping the ball in play. Having some fluid action. I thought that was the key early. Gonzaga was doing a pretty good job on the rebounding part. They were making their threes, getting a lot of inside outside action, and then where they post up their guards and kind of lift their big men was really effective in the first half. Seems like Carolina had to make an adjustment to that for the second half. On Carolina's part, just seems like they didn't drive the ball enough. They were just shooting jump shots and not, trying to get the ball inside the paint by either driving it or passing it into big guys, let them post up, kind of take their time and work, take their time and make their moves. So just seems like Gonzaga had playing to start the game. Second half, Carolina just stepped their defense up, and that's all it was. And they just be in. They finally got the ball into the paint. Joe Barry came alive, and that's what happened. I mean, it wasn't anything that Gonzaga didn't do. They pretty much played the same game they had the first half. Collins fouling out, I think, was a big key for them because good while he was in the game, he just wasn't in the game very long. So Hicks, what everybody expected Isaiah Hicks to do actually happened to Collins on Gonzaga's side. So just tell the two halves, and Carolina just made enough plays defensively. And surprisingly, for anybody who likes Carolina and follows Roy Williams and knows the history, that this isn't really his calling. But in this tournament, it was because they never played their best. They played some spurts where they looked their best, but they never put it all together for 40 minutes. So just a testament to Roy getting these kids to buy into the defense and just the kids themselves willing to take on the challenge. And they stepped up and they got it done. And I'm so happy.
Okay, my takeaway from the national championship was Gonzaga, I felt, could have done so much more, but they were obviously the most rattled by the officiating. It seemed like every time they tried to go get the ball inside, they were met with resistance, and instead of going back out and reposting, and maybe getting some more perimeter looks from their guards, particularly Williams and Matthews, it seemed like they were in a hurry, particularly in the possessions after the final TV timeout, going into the final 4 minutes. It just seemed like they had a little bit of panic, And maybe that's the cause of not having a true point guard. Williams Goss tried to take the role of leadership, but he's not a point guard. And I just think that not having that kind of hurt them down the stretch. They still got some of the opportunities that they wanted, but there were just times where you didn't see a guy just really take charge and not panic like Joel Berry did, for example, for Carolina. And I think that was the difference, to be honest. Other than Collins fouling out was huge, because not only was he didn't get a lot of minutes, but every time they got the ball inside to him, there was no one that could stop him. And let's just add to the fact that 4 of his 5 fouls were on the offensive end. Whether he was coming over the back where Carolina had position on a rebound, or he's got called for setting 2 illegal screens. So it just said like he never really got into the flow, but when they got him the ball, he could score. We got their center, I want to say Burkowski, but that's not it. But Kennedy Meeks.
It's like Pernosky, as I think.
Yeah. Kennedy Meeks got into Pernosky's head more than anything else on the court. Maybe because he was smaller and quicker to the ball, and maybe he just most of the time he just got good defensive position. And I think finding that he couldn't necessarily shoot over Meeks, he had to actually make a move to get by Meeks to score. Several times Pernosky felt that he was closer to the rim than he actually was. I mean, he missed about 3 or 4 layups, and that was clearly because of Meeks' presence. This honestly was about as bad as the 2011 UConn Butler. I mean, I know I tweeted it twice during the game that this is Butler bad. And that's not a thing about Butler. It was just those 2 championship games that Butler was in. Butler forced the action and played so well defensively that there was just no rhythm to the game, and they just couldn't hit shots. Nobody could hit shots. I mean, Justin Jackson went 0 of 9.
From the 3-point line.
Yes, but Justin Jackson countered that by probably playing his best one-on-one defensive job of the year on Nigel Williams-Goss.
I don't know, man. Dylan Brooks, he shut him down pretty good.
Pinson helped out too, but you could tell that Williams-Goss was not himself. And Jackson was 0 of 9 from 3, but when he was able to get inside, he could get his shots off the shorter Williams-Goss, and he definitely bothered Williams-Goss on the other end. Other than that, there were some lapses in the first half defensively, and Carolina clearly corrected those. One blatant one I saw was when Pinson got caught in a back screen and rotated late to Matthews, and that led to a 3. And then 2 or 3 possessions later, Barry doesn't get back over on an out of bounds play, and they just swing it over to Matthews, and hit another 3. So it was little things like that Carolina had to correct, and once they did that made the game. It just took whoever was going to make the last run of the game, and of course Carolina did, as they scored the game's last 8 points.
Right.
Overall,
hold on. Now, see, we can talk about that in like a clinical sense, and so now I'm gonna talk about this as in a fan sense, okay? Mm-hmm. So I went to the Dean Dome to watch the game because A, I wanted a party. B, started the season at the Dean Dome, ended the season at the Dean Dome, and C, the basketball guys couldn't be that cruel to me twice. Went to the Dean Dome last year, and they almost needed the paramedics to get me back to my car. I was so devastated. So that whole game was just nervous because one, the flow wasn't good, so they could never get going. And two, they weren't playing smart. They weren't doing the things that were easy. They would do them for like two or three possessions in a row and then stop, get up like 4 or 5 points, bad plays on defense, like you're saying, some lapses on defense. This was like so many nerves. So that last time out, it was like, my knees were so weak. It was like very hard to stand up because everybody was standing up, couldn't see anything. But yeah, just a feeling of overall elation when Kenny Meeks blocked that shot, excuse me. A whole year, 365 days of wanting this so bad to happen finally came true. And then it was just like total excitement, bedlam. And Dean Dome was crazy. Everybody flooding out, running towards Franklin Street to go have the party of all parties.
Same thing in Greensboro. We were live at there were four main bars in the city, and all were packed. I was in the I was in one in right on the edge of as you go in toward the east of the city. Theo Pinson, who's a Greensboro native, had some of his cousins who didn't go to Glendale. They were actually in the bar. So, of course, it was just about 200 Carolina fans in a spot that only holds about 350 capacity. So it was very, very live. And we kind of felt the same way. There were Carolina fans. Of course, there were some Duke fans that were there to root on Gonzaga, of course, and there was just it was an exciting time. Of course, yeah, I think the entire nation erupted when Williams Goss was on a fadeaway, and it never got to the rim. And of course, Barry hit Jackson, and of course, Jackson was streaking down court, and Barry hit him and got the dunk, which was tremendous. And then of course, Kennedy makes the next play and intercepts the next pass. So those two plays are going to be remembered, along with Barry's last 3-pointer and Hicks layup that that gave them the lead for good is probably going to be those are the 3 plays that they're going to take away. Just because Carolina actually won a tournament by buckling down and playing defense, which is incredible. You're right, because that's not what Roy does. That's not even his Kansas teams. He felt that he was going to try to blow you out. He wasn't necessarily trying to outscore you, and that was brought up across the country today, where folks say that you can't, Roy can't coach, or Roy doesn't want to, you can't trust Roy to diagram a play to win the game. I'm like, okay, I'm fine with that because he wants to be up by 15 at the end. So this was one of those where they found a way.
Roy Williams' philosophy comes from Dean Smith. Dean Smith always said that at the time. He said, maybe on one day for 1 minute on one hole, I could be better than Jack Nicklaus if we played. But the more holes we play, the better he's going to do than me, simply because he's better than I am. So that's what their philosophy was all about. If we can get the ball more times and make the game have more possessions in it, then eventually, if I get the chance to shoot at the basket more times, then I'm going to make more than you do because I'm better than you are.
Right. That's why he loads up with he's gone. Everybody has talked about this trend of shooting threes and making that the offense. People want to adapt like the Warriors and the Wizards and these other teams in the NBA. College is going that way, but Carolina's a little bit different. Carolina matches the pace, which has gone up astronomically over the last decade, but they're still going to come at you with with two bigs that are very athletic, and he's going to keep them on the floor. He's going to keep two bigs on the floor almost at all times, and they get a lot of free points because they're big. Carolina's bigs always run the floor. Um, even when you look at Sean May and out ahead of their man on the court. And all the guards had to do was just feed them the ball, and they caught it and dunked it. So
Well, Tyler,
a lot of that was
it's been that way. Like Kenny Smith said in the pregame when he was talking about Carolina's defense, the same thing about their offense. It's been the same for 35 years, man. I've watched North Carolina basketball my whole life, and except for the little time that Matt Doherty was the coach, everything is the same. The way they run the offense. Now the setups are a little bit different. Roy likes to run a lot of stuff, his little false motion, where Coach Smith liked to do a lot of his, early offense off the tee cut with the, point guard coming across the free throw line and then getting the ball and starting the offense. Roy kind of likes to start off in the box, and if he can get a little quick, easy one off the box, he'll take it, and then they'll kind of go into our offense. But other than that, everything else is basically the same. The way they play defense, the way they use timeouts, the way they run their offense, the way everything is geared around the point guard, realizing that he's the man. See, most people get fooled by Carolina's inside game, which is the best in the country when it's going good. But really, when they win the championships, especially under Roy Williams, is when the point guard has finally clicked on and realized that if he's a 20-point scorer in the tournament, at least most of the games or the games that matter, Carolina will win because everything else off the tempo, and he's already been trained the whole season to get the ball ahead, get the ball ahead, get the ball ahead. So if there's those opportunities there, everybody else will get their points. But once they start scoring, think about Ty Lawson, think about Raymond Felton, and then think about Joel Berry. They all, towards the end of the season, except for Berry because his shooting, went away because he had bad ankles. But those other two guys, especially, once their scoring picked up, the team went all the way to the championship. So
and you
that's the philosophy of
ones
Carolina
that did
basketball.
win it, even the ones that did win it under Smith. The great teams that did win under Smith all had great point guards. You look at McInnes, you look at Ed Cota, which I think is one of the greatest travesties in Carolina history, is him not getting a national championship because he is the perfect Carolina point guard.
It's the first time ever that Carolina's point guard got hurt in the tournament, and it didn't take him out for the entire tournament.
Exactly.
Like Kenny Smith broke his arm going into the tournament, in the ACC tournament, missed the tournament. Michael Jordan's last year. Then you had Kendall Marshall, of course, broke his wrist in the tournament and couldn't play against Kansas in the Elite Eight. And then you had, this just makes the one time where Joel Berry got hurt in the tournament and he didn't have to miss the whole thing, and it actually prevailed. So another key.
As we look going into next year, obviously it's all about who always about who has the best players. So you look at your Arizona, you look at Gonzaga, which gets a lot back. You look at Kentucky, who's somehow they managed to reload. So despite whoever declares, they've already had 3 declares. Monk, of course, Fox, and Bam declared today as we record. But Kentucky will be back. You look at Duke. You don't know what Allen's gonna do, but still, Tatum is gone, and Giles is gone. So you kind of figure out who's gonna go where. You're gonna have to think that UCLA will likely be in the fold because they got a great freshman class coming. If they lose TJ Leaf, that's a big blow. But of course they'll have they'll need a point guard, and of course they'll get Jello Ball, who will be probably your designated shooter. So it's going to be interesting to see uh, how these All Americans, as they go to wherever they go, they're going to figure out guys like Jalen Hands, for example, the number one freshman in the country, Michael Porter. Where is he going after Lorenzo Romar got fired at Washington? Is he going to follow his dad to Missouri, or is he going to end up on the West Coast, or at possibly UCLA or somewhere else? So
No, he's already declared that he's going to Missouri.
Yeah, okay, he's going to follow. Okay, so he's going to Missouri. All right, well, then I guess makes them obviously a possible threat now. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens this offseason with these guys declare and end up at their schools, because it's not our father's NCAA anymore. I mean, these freshmen matter. So I'm looking forward to it. I don't know what Carolina's going to have to come back. I don't know. Well, I mean, Barry. I think if Barry graduates, he has one more year, so it could be wise for him to stay.
Mm-hmm.
It could be. Yeah, he could very well be back. I mean, it's a lot of point guards that are better than him declaring, and I think he would be, at best, he's a mid-second rounder. So it could benefit him to come back.
Totally agree.
But we'll wait and see on that. It's going to be very, very interesting. I'm looking forward to come around October when practice resumes, when practice begins for 2017, 2018. We'll see. As we go forward, just want to remind you that you are listening to Know the Score on the CSPN. You can find us on just about any app that you use to listen to your podcast radio. Of course, we're on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher. If you use any of those apps, you can find us. All you have to do is just search Know the Score. And once again, you can find us on Twitter at KTS Pod. Just want to give a shout out to our other two hosts, Nebias Wilborn at NWilborn19 and Jesse at That's So Jesse. That's so, and then JESSY. We move on to the NBA, and this is literally we are in the last week of the regular season. Most teams have 5 games or less to play. You kind of have your races within the races. There's always the race for 8th, for that last playoff spot. But actually, it's going to be a few more things involved. In the Eastern Conference, you have a dead heat between the Cavaliers and the Celtics for the top seed. You also have a dead heat which would be the 3 and 4 seed, with the Wizards and the Hawks? Give me 1 second. Yeah, Cavs and Celtics are tied for first place in the East, and in
Toronto and Washington.
Toronto and the Wizards and the Raptors. I'm sorry. Cavs and Celtics are 50 and 27. The Raptors and Wizards are 47 and 31. So they're practically locked in for that battle for the 3.
Milwaukee and Atlanta are basically a half a game apart for 5 and 6.
For 5 and 6, and then 7, 8, and 9 are essentially a half game between the Bulls and Pacers, which are in a dead heat for the 7 and 8, and the Heat are a half game behind them they're in ninth, and another game and a half back are the Hornets at
So
36 or 42. So
so basically what we're saying is you can't afford that week this week if you're in the Eastern Conference, because you might be in a spot that's favorable now, but by the end of the weekend, you may be somewhere that you don't want to be, in a matchup that you don't want in the first round, or totally out of the playoffs altogether if you're down here at the bottom.
right, and you look at right now, if I'm the Celtics, let's say I'm the Celtics and I get the number one, what matchup would I prefer? The Heat, the Bulls, or the Pacers? Because, and I want to bring this up for the Celtics because I think Cleveland doesn't care. Cleveland will will roll the basketballs out and just play. So the question is for Boston. What matchup would you prefer the Celtics getting?
I would probably say Miami, just because I think Isaiah Thomas can kind of halfway guard Dragic a little bit. I don't think that he can guard Rondo. Well, maybe Rondo too, because Rondo's not going to try to shoot on him. He'll just try to post him up, and they can double team and force Rondo to pass. So yeah, maybe Indiana and Chicago. I mean Indiana and Miami, or Chicago. Excuse me, Chicago and Miami. I don't think Indiana is a team they really need spot right now, just because it's a bad matchup for their most important player, who is very good on offense, but he's kind of mismatched, not in your favor on defense.
That's one of those where if the Pacers match up against them, that is one of those series where Paul George could take over.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask for four games, 4 great games out of Paul George, that can happen. Because even though the Celtics are a terrific defensive team, Paul is an elite player, and he's got a favorable matchup when he goes up against a guy like Crowder. So I like Indiana's chances if they get in that 2-7 or even the 1-8. And you look at the Wizards. Wizards are interesting here. They're going to play their first home court playoff series in a while. It's amazing that they finally come to fruition. They haven't been hit with the super serious injury bug, so I'm looking forward to them getting. I mean, they had a couple of chances 2 years ago before John Wall went down with the wrist injury, but now they're going to have home court. So,
and I think everybody would say they've upgraded their coach since that run too.
Scott, yeah, I think no injuries plus Scott. You have to give credit to Scott Brooks. I mean, Scott Brooks is clearly an upgrade from Randy Whitman. The key, of course, to them is getting scoring from Gortat and getting scoring from their bench. As long as they do that and they win, if they win the battle of the bench, and Beal is
I
hitting
don't think
shots.
that's their. Yeah, I think that's more important. They don't really have a bench, so I think that's kind of a lost cause. I think they're going to want to keep leads and sustain leads. Their
That's
wing
why I said
players
the
are going to
bench
have to
figures
make.
in some of that. As long
Right.
as they don't lose lead, and Wall comes back in down 12 to 10 or down 10 or 12 points. If the bench can just keep leads and not just take a serious L when the other team's bench comes in. And I'm not a real big fan of them going up against Giannis and company in Milwaukee.
I would be very afraid of him.
That's an odd matchup.
If I'm any team, just for the mess up the metrics and what everybody has ever thought about the game of basketball, I'd love for them to play the Cavs and watch Giannis guard everybody on the Cavs at like one point in the series.
That would be wild to see him try to guard LeBron. That would actually be pretty cool. But yeah. But I'll let the Wizards. I will hopefully the Wizards can kind of sneak in and get and knock the Raptors into the 4, and they can get the 3 and get a great matchup with the Hawks. I would absolutely love that.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be actually a fun series to attend though,
Yeah.
traveling between the two cities. I'm pretty sure the parties would be
Yeah,
pretty good.
overly lit. Yes, absolutely. I mean,
There's gonna be a bunch of beat reporters scrambling trying to get that series if
you
that's the
you
matchup.
you ain't lying. Yeah, I would love to see a Wizards Hawks, and then Wizards would move on to as the 3 to take on the Celtics, which would be the most compelling series in probably in the entire playoffs if the Wizards were to get the Celtics, because you have the battle of two of the top 2 East point guards will go up against each other, and teams that actually
You're
like to get up
saying
and down the court.
if the Wizards are 3 and they move on?
Yeah, if the
No,
Wizards are 3 and the Celtics
they,
are the
they
2.
play. Oh yeah, if the Celtics are the 2, yeah. So you're
Yeah,
assuming Cleveland's going to win the East
yeah. I would assume
in
Cleveland
this
wins the East.
scenario. Okay, all right, I got you. I follow you now.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, because Cleveland doesn't want to. For me, LeBron's getting older. I think the Cavs are starting to maybe wear down a little bit because they've done this run, won the title, fell short in the title. Now they're trying to come back again and go 3 times in a row. Kind of like the Warriors at the end of last year. They kind of hit that wall and then looked like they were interested. But I don't know if the Cavs have that spark to them this year to just turn it on. And I don't know if they can survive having to play the Wizards, who are probably going to test them and, give them a couple of games. They're going to go down to the wire and then have to turn it right back around and maybe get Boston too, and don't have that home court where I know he's done it before, but, how many times can you ask LeBron to go to that well and put on the cape,
and
The
he's talking
the
it,
plan,
of course.
the
He
plan when he came to Cleveland and surrounded himself with all these people, all these choice pieces that he quote unquote wanted, was to ensure that he wouldn't have to put on the cape so much, that he would, have some super, and then he would just have to be super and, here or there and not have to go full time. But it looks like for this run, if they're going to make it back to where they want to be and give Cleveland back-to-back championships, he's going to have to go in the phone booth and come out full time with the cape.
and
And I
he's
just
gonna have
don't
to on
know.
both ends of the court too.
Right. And I just don't know if he's got that in him for a whole 16 wins this time around.
Hmm. All right, let's shift down to the Western Conference, where it's pretty much all set. Um, there's only one spot up for grabs, where Denver and Portland are going hard for the last playoff spot. The Blazers are literally up half a game. I think the edge there is going to be Portland, um, and because they have Dame Lillard, and he tends to he is probably the only one on those 2 teams. He's probably the only player that's capable of having a dominant type performance, because he knows that playoff stretches. He tends to tune things up for that, and of course he has a little bit more help than the Nuggets do. So assuming that they finished 8th, of course that's just all it is the only grand prize is to play the Warriors in the first round. Warriors are playing probably their best basketball of the season right now. They've won, I think they're up to 11 in a row. They're going to end up at least 4 games of the Spurs, as they win they've already clinched the division, of course. But so let's look at
And
the
as
interesting
you
matchup.
downplay the Kevin Durant's coming back on Saturday.
Oh yeah, that too. So it's
Oh yeah, that too.
They're playing their best basketball and they get Durant, which is crazy. Uh, well, as we look at their road, at the Warriors' road to the finals, let's just go with the simple breakdown. The 1-8, which will be the Blazers. Let's go to 2-7, which is the Spurs Grizzlies. That's an ugly series, but I think Kawhi Leonard is just the dominant factor. The Grizzlies love to,
Kawhi Leonard versus Tony Allen is
and
going to
that
be the
come
passing,
on,
the
that's
passing
almost
of the
unfair.
torch.
That's almost unfair. Um,
Tony Allen, does Tony Allen have one more last effort in him to shut down Kawhi?
Even if he does, I just think there's gonna be too much Aldridge, and they just come at you in waves.
I
Um,
don't know. I
and they
don't know.
get wins.
That's a one team though that Memphis kind of is built to play against, and they're kind of built to play against each other,
Hmm.
or the Spurs and the Grizzlies. Because I mean, it makes sense as the guy who coaches Memphis used to be a part of the Spurs staff, but they kind of are set up the same, where they kind of have the two big men down low. The Spurs just have the better at small forward, but I mean, he's still predicated defensive first kind of guy, small forward, same way with Tony Allen. And then the backcourt, I think that the Grizzlies have the advantage in the backcourt because
Hmm.
Tony Parker's getting up there. And Conley's, of course, is still a beast. So it's going to be an interesting series. If Memphis can maybe get the pace up a little bit, they might be able to get by the Spurs.
I think they take one game at the max. Um, because
But that's
the
going to
last
be
two matchups haven't been close. Actually, they've been Spurs sweeps. So
right.
I'm not sure if you get.
But
I'm not sure
I
if you
just
got a little bit more efficient. You got a little bit more efficient play from the bench, and I think that's
mhm.
going to be the real edge that pushes the Spurs above
but I
the
would say
Grizzlies.
this. I would say
Hmm.
this: the last two times that they played in the playoffs, the Spurs were playing that flow type of basketball, move the ball, move
Hmm.
the man, get the best and closest shots you can to the basket, and constantly keep the ball. Now they don't play that way. Now they old school, dump it down, back to the basket, wait to see what your defense does, and then we do what we're gonna do. Either you double team and we throw it to the open man and kick it around and try to get a three or repost, or you single up, then our big man kind of does what he's gonna do. And I think Memphis can. I think that plays into Memphis's hands defensively better than their old way that they would play, where they would have all these crazy mismatches because Randolph and Gasol would have to come out and play these guys out in the perimeter a little bit more in the past way that the Spurs ran their offense. They're a very intriguing team if you watch them years, just the way that they've evolved from playing that almost like soccer style of basketball to now going back to almost like an early 90s style of basketball.
Now, of course, the best matchup in the playoffs in the first round will likely be the Rockets and the Thunder. Probably will decide the MVP. Um, of course, you have Westbrook taking on James Harden, your top two MVP candidates. Of course, Westbrook does not have to do anything else this season, and he will finish with a triple double. He's practically clinched it already by average. So you have that. You have Harden, who's put up monstrous numbers himself. He's probably going to win the NBA assist title. Uh, just I don't know about this matchup because I know the Rockets have better weapons. I know Russ is going to be Russ, but can the Thunder make enough shots to stay competitive in the series?
Billy Donovan may have to trade off Doug McDermott's defense and his lack of it for what he may be able to provide in just a consistency type of way or a threat. Yeah, because that's the whole deficiency of the Thunder, the way they're made up right now. It's just they don't have anybody who can shoot. Like the rest can drive. They've got the guys who can rebound it and board it or finish it when he drives and kicks it to them. But when he drives and kicks it outside of the paint, you just kind of put your head down and hope for the best.
Yeah, because you got Oladipo and Robinson is already known as a self check. So I mean, and Sabonis can make a few shots, but that's not his game. I mean, he's gonna
Right.
have to provide that and some. Um, I just don't know if you can have Russell do it for one game, you can have him do it for 2 games, but I don't know if you can have it for 4 and have to go back and forth, and then
Well,
have to play against Portland too.
the first round is so long. The game, it'll be like, you might play on Saturday and then you might not play your second game until Wednesday. It's weird the way that they space the games out in the
Mm-hmm.
first round because they have so many games to put on TV.
Right.
So the first round, yeah, he could probably get away with it. But yeah, once you get into the second round of conference finals and finals, where that pattern is the days in between games are a lot shorter, then yeah, then I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where your point will come in, where he'll just wear down if and you just bank on him not being able to do it. But then again, talking about, I mean, he takes no plays, no days off. So who says he can't do it?
Um, as just an anomaly for a series, the Jazz and the Clippers. I almost think this is the
Yeah.
most evenly matched series in the first round. I think you just roll the ball out, and whoever has the better offensive output from their starting five is probably going to be the best team in the series. Of course, that leaves the X factor Jamal Crawford, who can still fill it up. Um, he probably won't win the six man award again this year, but he's still a threat off the bench and probably the best off the bench guy you'll see in these playoffs. Um, I'm looking forward to this series. I mean, this is the Jazz actually being in the fourth spot without Dante Exum is probably one of the most underrated and remarkable stories of this season.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, you know, I mean, it's Quinn Snyder. I mean, what in the world? What nobody expected this quickly, but you know, uh, Quinn trusts Jerry. Yeah, I mean, he's going to the Jerry Sloan playbook actually, and he gets a couple of shooters. He has a big man. Instead of having a big man who just dumping it down to score, he has a big man who can erase a lot of mistakes on defense in in the as we call them, the Stifle Tower. but and they got two of the most efficient players in the conference as far as scoring in Hood and Gordon Hayward, who's kind of coming to his own.
The
Um,
stretch four has revolutionized the game of basketball because now, if you do have an offensively challenged center that all he can do is play defense, you're more likely to let him stay on the court for that if you have a four man who can operate around him, meaning outside of the paint.
right.
And, you know, that's kind of where Blake Griffith had to kind of get his game to where he didn't have to stand in the paint with DeAndre Jordan because then they'd be fighting for the same real estate. So that's why Blake's game has now gone out to 3 point line. So now DeAndre can have all the paint to operate if they're both in the game, and Blake does his work, out on the floor a little bit more now.
But
And that's kind of, I think, the change that basketball is going through now. So now it's not traditional two guys in the paint clogging up everything where you can't drive and your little guys can't do the things that they like to do, and you get that spectacular style of basketball.
and here's the thing with Blake Griffin now. For some reason, narrative on Blake now is he's just a regular. He's a regular guy now. He's not the dynamic. I'm gonna go to the rim and just attack attack. Uh, he's he's more reliant on his jump shot than ever, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the Clippers really need that still in the playoffs. I think they want him to be more aggressive. I think he's been a little bit more laid back as an offensive player, and now it's kind of hurt his value, I guess.
But I think
He's not
that
known
that's
as
the
the guy that he was.
trade off that they had when they re-signed DeAndre Jordan and kind of promised them to make him a little bit more of a bigger focus as far as their offense goes. Well, if you're gonna do that, then Blake can't, you know, in the paint and attacking the paint because DeAndre posted up or run plays where he can get alley oops off ball reversals. So you got to space the floor, and the person who can do that is Blake. So I think that may just be kind of their strategy, not necessarily him and his demeanor changing, but just the way that they're playing based off of some promises that they made to a player that they probably should have let go and would have been in their best interest.
Hmm. And that's really interesting of where his future is within the team and where that team's future is going to be because um I mean their owner wants to win, and I don't know if this team is kind of it's just they're just stuck in a rut, I guess.
Yeah, they're
They're not good enough to compete with, let's say, the Warriors and Spurs, but they're not bad enough to tank.
well, it's funny because I mean, before the before the Warriors changed coaches, the Clippers were it. They were the next team kind of nipping at the heels of the Spurs. Everybody thought it was going to be the Clippers that were going to make that, jump past the Spurs. But I mean, because out of nowhere to win the championship. I mean, they were good and you could see some things happening, but you didn't expect them to go from, I think they were the seventh seed or the sixth seed when they San Antonio in 6 games to we're gonna series run and gun our way to a championship over the Cavs and then come back and be the best team everybody's seen in the regular season. Nobody, that wasn't 4 years ago. If you go back and look at the NBA, poised to be the next big threat, and then to see how far they've fallen in those same 4 years is amazing. And it just goes to show that they really need to tell Doc, hey man, we know you like having all this power and all this and all that. Keep the title, but we'll get you somebody in here who really knows what they're doing and let him do all the work for you.
Hmm.
Somebody that doesn't have an ego that'll let Doc take the craft and who they get in free agent see, but it's really he's pulling all the strings and making all the things happen because they have a team that just doesn't make sense as far as the way they're made up. And I think that's hurting them more than anything. It's just their personnel falls short because, like you said, they don't have a small forward. They are really playing kind of with one arm behind their back at shooting guard. I mean, JJ Redick has made tremendous strides to become a starter, this late in his career, but shooting guards in the West, he's pretty down on the list. Chris Paul is getting older. I mean, he's still playing brilliant basketball, but he's losing a step. And then you've got DeAndre Jordan, who's not really an offensive threat, and what he means on defense doesn't mean as much now if teams are making threes. They don't really get a chance to impact the game. So I just think they just need to take an overall look at their team and their GM position and try to refocus their GM position, focus their overall team.
Yep. I just they're just they're the enigma. That's just what it is. I just can't see I can't see them moving past any any of
Any of
those teams that are
upper
ahead of
echelon
them. I
teams.
just can't see them.
Yeah,
I can't see it.
yeah. They're not beating Houston. They're not beating the Spurs. They're not beating the Warriors. And if you're not any beating any one of those three teams as a lower seed, then you're not really going to make any noise in the playoffs.
No, not at all. Um, well, as we just look into some other events, baseball's underway. We're in opening week of the season. Um, I kind of am just waiting to see how this whole Atlanta Braves thing is going to work out, especially with the situation with the highway in Atlanta collapsing. Uh, are they going to get fans to the stadium? Is the question. But the Braves believe that that's where the fans are, which is kind of interesting, and that's not necessarily interesting in a good way. Um, I think that can the Cubs repeat? Of course, which is one of the most difficult things to do in pro sports, especially baseball, because just the way things go. Um, Madison Bumgarner's already off to a good start. Actually, not necessarily. We don't necessarily mean on the dish either. He banged out two home runs in his first start, in addition to pitching a perfect 6 innings of ball. Of course, the Giants bullpen going Giants bullpen, and they ended up blowing the save. But it's good to see Madison is at it again, and he's actually one of the best hitting pitchers, arguably of all time right now. So that was the noise that was coming out this upcoming week. I mean, this past few days of opening week.
Yeah, it's
Um,
funny how the shift of baseball has now focused in the National League after all these years of American League kind of being the big news getters with Trout and the Yankees and kind of all the Kansas City coming out of nowhere a couple of years ago to win the World Series. Kind of the American League has been kind of the darling of baseball. But it's good to see it shift back over a little bit. I'm interested to see if the Mets pitching staff can stay together and stay healthy for a whole year. They've got 3-4 years of big league experience now. Start becoming more pitchers. The likelihood of injuries should go down, and they should be able to get deeper into these games, which can help the Mets bullpen. I'm looking forward to see how McCutchen plays in right field, and if that kind of saves his legs and helps him get back to being one of the best 5 players in the National League, especially hitting the ball. And Mary's interested to see if the Orioles can get over the hump and make it to the World Series. They're probably the best team in the American League who hasn't gotten to the World Series yet. Their pitching has got to be able to give their bullpen a little bit less work, their starting pitching. The American League Central should be fun all year. Kansas City, the Royals should be able to bounce back. The Indians, of course, should be strong. They're looking to try to get back to the World Series and get a chance to redeem themselves. And then in the West, I think, the West could be wide open this year. I know Texas played really good last year. Houston may be the team that shocks everybody this year, and they may actually be poised to make a huge run. They've got their pitching staff closers lined up, and now they finally got some bats. George Springer, very consistent. Altuve, of course, is MVP type of talent. So I think Houston might be the team to watch in all of baseball this year.
yeah, they've got the staff down to match up with the bats, and of course uh, they still have a loaded farm system ready. So it's not necessarily what you have from one to 17, but it may also be what you have in AAA that you're able to
Mm-hmm.
pair up and make trades, and particularly particularly when you need another power bat or another power arm in the bullpen come trade deadline. So usually the teams that obviously go through the least amount of injuries, The teams that have the best farm systems and the most assets, and also the teams who play the best defense are the teams that will most likely emerge over this long haul of 162 games, which is still which sounds like an unreal amount of games to play, but that is how it's done.
Oh man, but see, baseball is the only sport where you play because you
Yeah.
have days and days and days in the same place. So I mean, these guys they go play golf, they go fishing, they take in shows.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, and plus, if you've ever seen or been around a baseball, any type of behind the scenes, they don't really do much in their warm ups. They don't really do much in their practices. They stretch, they jog lightly, they do more grab ass and ha ha when it comes to on the field. Now maybe on their own time and underneath in the tunnels when they lift their weights and take their reps and in the tunnel in the cage and stuff, that's probably a little bit harder. But as far as what you see on the field when they warm up, man, it's just a bunch of fun. And then they go out and then they have batting practice. And batting practice is the funnest part about playing baseball because it's when you get to try everything you want to in the game that you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Behind the back flips and catching the ball behind your back or letting it get over your head and see if you can run it down. And, so that part of it's not hard. 2 games part of it really isn't that much of a grind, except for if you play in the hot cities like Texas or Atlanta and
Or
places like that
California,
where
right?
the
Or
humidity
Arizona
is
for the
so
Diamondbacks.
Miami. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
places where the humidity is really great. Now it may take a toll on you there, but for the most part, I think it may be easier than we think because they don't seem like they want to change it. Don't seem you don't hear the players ever saying, "Oh, we need less games" or long shorter series or anything like that. Everybody seems to be okay with it, so maybe it's not that hard.
Well, when you think about it, um, baseball does have the highest per pay ratio for individual, but then you have to look at it this way too. The reason why baseball can do what it does with the 162 games is that uh, TV can pay more. I mean, they got double the games. They got double the games in the NBA and the NHL. So, of course, the players aren't going to, the players are built for the grind because it's the same. They go through that same grind in high school and in college where you are going to play just about every
50
day. I mean,
games, 40
college you
games.
play
Yeah.
what? College you may play 6 games a week, easy.
Yeah.
You may play on a Tuesday, a Wednesday, and then you play uh double. You may play double header on Saturday and a single game on Sunday, or You may play Wednesday and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday single games. So you can easily play 4 to 6 games in a week. So yeah, I don't. I mean, I see that happening, and the minor league schedule's the same way,
Hmm.
where you
Yeah.
play it almost every other day, and then a day for
You
travel.
play. The season's broken down in like home and away stretches, and usually the home and away stretches, the longest ones are usually like 10, 11 games. And then sometimes you may get a short stretch where you do like a 4 game stretch or a 3 game stretch is a short one. But usually a home stretch lasts like an average of about 6 games. And then you may have a day game and then you travel after that day game. And then you may start your away stretch. And that may be 6 to 8 more days of games on the road. And then you come back home and then you may have a stretch of 10 games at home.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how their schedule works.
Right, and it's like I'm looking forward to. Typically, I'm looking forward to the minor league. Well, of course, I'm in Greensboro, so we have a single A minor league team here. Uh, the Grasshoppers, which is the feeder program, the single A feeder program for the Marlins. Uh, we were last year was a little bit of a sad occasion. The Marlins, of course, lost one of their great pitchers, Jose Fernandez, in a boating accident. Uh, of course, he was celebrated at all of the franchises where he pitched, including in Greensboro. You're gonna see a lot of. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of Fernandez jerseys. A lot of Marlins gear is moved around here, so uh, I think they're gonna have a day where they say goodbye to Fernandez officially as part of this early portion of the schedule. Um, but I actually like minor league baseball, just giving you a perspective and how it relates to fans. I mean, baseball has a great relationship with its fans all across the board, but I think the minor league aspect of being in the small towns and just giving you that dream perspective, it's kind of like college basketball when you think about it. Uh, they want that team per se to represent you. Just like we pick a major college team as a representation of ourselves. I think our small town team kind of represents our city in a way, and I think um, that's why we will always support minor league baseball if we can't get to um, a major league team in our town. So baseball is going to survive. I think as long as the new generation of baseball players in the high school and the secondary level, um, they continue to play the game, and I think that's going to be more key than anything else.
Yeah, yeah. Baseball. I think the World Baseball Classic. I think a lot of the fun, charisma, and the personality of that opened up a lot of people's eyes to what baseball could be. And now I think the pressure is on the MLB as a league to try to, let it be that. Now, I'm not saying they have to let it go full on like that is, but let that flair and let that come out and kind of, do away with all the quote unquote unwritten rules that are in baseball. I think that's what baseball suffers from the most is there's nothing in a 10-minute span of baseball that can attract a young person's attention usually. Whereas if you
Right.
watch 10 minutes of football or you watch 10 minutes of basketball or even 10 minutes of soccer, there's going to be something that's going to make you say, ooh, make you stand up. And, where baseball's not really that way.
Yep. That's a yeah, I think that's one of those things where you have to do something to catch the casual fan. And that's the hardest sport to catch the casual fan.
Exactly. Baseball is a game where if you're a fan of it, it's probably been passed down to you. You've learned to appreciate it from someone else who was much likely older than you were, an uncle or a grandfather or a father. It's kind of that to understand the nuance and find out the beauty in baseball is you have to have somebody sit down and say, hey, it's cool in baseball, or this is why you see what he did right there. That's pretty good for this type of baseball play where it's not as evident in other sports.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I
Yeah,
think
that's what.
that's kind of the struggle that baseball has in is that if the younger kids don't take the time to sit with their grandfathers or sit with their dads or sit with their uncles or sit with their older brothers and watch a game of baseball, then they'll never fully get what's so good about it because you just can't watch it and say, I'm attracted to this game.
Yep. All right, man. As I look to close this out, is there anything that you reflected on, any final thoughts you have as we look forward to next week and the NBA
Um,
playoffs?
just want to say that 20 years ago, young guy with a weird kind of first name but a cool nickname changed the way that people looked at black kids and golf together. As Tiger Woods is won the years ago, 1997. Just historical in so many perspectives, and pretty much launched his career into the stratosphere. That fantastic Nike ad
The Hello
You
World
know,
campaign.
yeah, that they were in that year was fantastic. So just everything about this is just remembering Tiger Woods when he was the real Tiger Woods, and let's celebrate that. And can't believe it's been 20 years, man.
You know, I have a 1997 memory to share also related to the NCAA tournament. Um, one of the hated rivalries in the 90s on the HBCU level was in basketball, where uh, North Carolina A&T was rebuilding its basketball program, trying to recover from a terrible 90s decade, and as the power shifted over to Coppin State University, uh, and the legendary Fang Mitchell, who began to dominate after Don Corbett retired. Um, Mitchell took Mitchell won 4 regular season titles for Coppin State University. The last being the 1997 season, where he took a undefeated Coppin State University, as they knocked off North Carolina and upstart North Carolina A&T in the MEAC championship, and went on to knock off the 2-seeded South Carolina Gamecocks, led by BJ Mackey, in the first round of the NCAA tournament. It's one of the 3 upsets that the conference has, along with Norfolk State taking out Missouri and Hampton taking. Um, it's
I think that Hampton is the most memorable just because of them picking up their coach and his reaction when they were carrying him off the court.
Yep, Tarvis carrying off Steve Murfield. Matter of fact, you throw in another fact in there that their point guard Marseille Brown was a member of the Richmond team that beat South Carolina just 3 years earlier. Uh, so he was a part of 2 uh, major upsets. But Copper State, it's been 20 years since Copper State. That team got together and recently to celebrate the 20th anniversary. It was good to see all of those guys could be back in Baltimore. Um, Again, that team hasn't had much to cheer about since then. I mean, they've won. They've made 2 appearances in the NCAA tournament since in those 20 years. Mitchell was Mitchell eventually stepped down as uh, coach and athletic director about 5 years ago, and it was a sad time. It was one of those signs that you know basketball is changing in the MEAC. But 20 years ago, a lot of people knew what MEAC basketball was about, and that team, which went undefeated in the regular season, led by Turquin Mott, uh, Danny Singletary at the guard, uh, one of my favorite all-time MEAC players, Anton Brockington, um, and one of the deadliest shooters in MEAC history in Fred Warwick. Uh, they ran the table, and North Carolina A&T took them to overtime in the MEAC tournament final. Um, it's a great time, great basketball. Uh, a lot of folks remember how Coppin State was one of those teams that recruited from the inner city. They would go out to Fang had recruiting grounds in Philadelphia, where he would literally go into the public schools and bring them into this little private school in Baltimore. Um, they had the reputation of being a bunch of thugs, but he turned them into men, which was, still great to this day. Um, Fang is one of those guys I will always respect and I have love for. And I actually talk to him at least 3 or 4 times a year. And I'm actually even close to his secretary, who actually celebrated her first appearance in the NCAA tournament for a while, as she is now in the University of New Orleans. And of course, they made the first 4 this year. So just a salute to the Coppin State Eagles from 1997, as we just want folks to remember HBCU basketball is still a thing. For Don Delawente, myself, Tyler Ball, Now you know the score.